Got it. Nicole, whenever you're ready.
Thank you.
No, it is very important, once again, you use my microphone.
Thanks. I would like to call October 24th committee meeting to order at 6:10. The Scituate School Committee is committed to providing an environment of respect during meetings. We ask all members to interact in a polite manner, even when there is disagreement. We value the participation of our community and want all participants, including marginalized and minoritized communities, to feel welcomed and respected. We ask our community members and all who participate to commit to these standards to support and respect our community. Public comment will be available by Zoom as well as in person. Community members can also email me at nbrandolini@cit.org with questions at any time. That being said, we will start tonight with public comment. Take a look at the Zoom here. All right. Seeing no hands raised for our public participants, we will move on to our student representatives, Emma Rydell and Victor Bowker.
Hello.
Hello. All right. Well, to congratulate in the room, we are wearing suit jackets and pajama pants because today's Spirit Day theme was Zoom Day, so business up top, casual down below. It is homecoming week, and so we have a lot of themes and Spirit Days going throughout the week, and this was day one. Very exciting. So now to the real update. Colleges are continuing with schools like American, North American, and University of North Carolina looking and presenting and talking to students during homeroom. I've gone to quite a few of these, and they have been hugely informative. Also, some juniors USA's school Wednesday, well, which was a great first practice. I remember I did terribly on the air, but it was fun. And the NEA was teaching on November 7th. That's scary. Various things. We're working hard on getting this stuff. The fall concerts are scheduled for tomorrow. Like choir and instrumental band performing at 7 p.m. at the Performing Arts Center. And homecoming week is on us with various sports and activities. Home games, field hockey, listening, girls soccer, volleyball, and football with Spirit Week. The block party is at 4 p.m. on Friday and dance at 6 p.m. on Saturday with the masturbate.
All right. So the Credit for Life Fair is scheduled for Wednesday, November 2nd. This event is a great opportunity for students to learn about many of their life situations, like budgeting car, insurance, saving, and many more. I took part in this last year and a lot about the things.
Hold on 1 second. Sorry to cut you off. There's feedback and Zoom. Nobody can hear. I don't know if there's anything we can do to sort of test that out with some feedback. Was it microphone maybe based feedback on Zoom?
I'm sorry, you're getting feedback?
Not us, but folks on Zoom are reporting that they're getting feedback. I think
I don't hear anything. It is a little echoey just due to the microphone situation, but when I hear it, there is no.
All right.
Feedback.
Okay. Sorry.
Completely understand. Happy to help. Okay. The junior class took a field trip to Walden Pond on Tuesday the 18th, inspired by the teaching of Henry David Thoreau, which is taught in all English classes in the junior grade. AP Government and Politics, not to plug our own class, but we baked marble or layered federalism cakes to signify that sometimes messy exchange between state and federal governments. The class enjoyed the cakes while continuing to investigate the great intricacies of the American government. And we're at a little bit of a riot around the school now because we have bribed, I think, the entire history department with our federalism cakes. So we tried very hard. The shortfall grant opportunity was due today and is scheduled for Thursday from 4 to 6 in the SHS library. Clubs, athletic teams, students, and teachers are encouraged to apply for great benefits in Scituate High. And one of these opportunities is the situation presenting a local branch of the Veterans of Foreign Wars speech competition to answer the question, why is the veteran important? Speeches will be heard by a local panel on November 9th, and we are entertaining Mr. Kitchen, who is a veteran himself, tomorrow for both people interested in the speech competition and being interviewed by situation students. So that's kind of it. Like Victor said, the end of the quarter is our next meeting, so we'll definitely be hearing more about that, but we're very excited for homecoming this week, and yeah, that's about it.
Thank you. Anyone have any comments, or anything for school reps tonight? All right, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, so next on our agenda is school building subcommittee, just a sort of a housekeeping agenda item. On his computer or on the Zoom? Okay, perfect. Great. So just a quick housekeeping agenda item, school building subcommittee, just changing one of the liaisons will remain Janice, and then replacing myself with Peter. Peter, I don't know if you have anything to add.
I have nothing to add.
All right, so I will entertain a motion to swap us out.
I'll make a motion that the school committee consider a change to the school building subcommittee liaison assignment. Sorry. Is that what I wanted to say?
Thank you.
Or the school committee votes to make a motion to add Nicole Brandolini and delete Peter Yates from the school building subcommittee position.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so old business here, we have Superintendent Burkhead's goals, which were presented at our last meeting. We had a chance to review them, and we can vote tonight if everybody's comfortable with that. Happy to share my screen if you want and pop those back up. That's helpful. Maybe not. Here it is. Oh, I got it. Just needed itself to catch up with it, whatever. All right, so here's the presentation from last time. Any questions or further discussion or comment from the committee on Superintendent Burkhead's goals? 22-23. If there's nothing further, I will take a motion on those.
I move that we approve the 2022-2023 superintendent goals as presented.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. All right, I will keep sharing here and we'll move to some new business here, which is our school committee goals. No voting to be had tonight on this agenda item, just kind of a first glance. Okay, so Carrie and I will can kind of go back and forth and just go through this. Wanted to put it out there, kind of growing in stride with Superintendent Burkhead and the district, wanting to kind of keep in mind being on board with all of the hard work that's being done and supporting those efforts. So we sort of put it together through the lens of, not that as school committee goals we needed to put it in this perspective, but I think we just felt it organized well this way. So teachers have a student achievement goal all the way through the superintendent having their student achievement goal. So just to sort of organize our goals similarly, I felt was helpful for clarity. So for our student achievement goal, Carrie, did you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so I mean, I don't think people can read it once we get on the website, but essentially the goal is around preparation of 100% of students. And it was really important to us as a group to talk about 100% preparation for their choice of post-secondary pursuits, because we want to acknowledge that all kids come to us with different paths. And so we wanted to be supportive of that. We also included ways that we thought we as a district would meet these goals. And so, policy reviews, working with the superintendent and his leadership team to monitor progress. And as Superintendent Burke had talked about, monitoring progress. Yes, the MCAS, as Heidi presented last time, is important. And there are other data points that include social emotional learning, and the equity audit that's ongoing, and other things that are happening around the district. Additionally, of course, we're looking to approve the new strategic plan for the district, and we'll be engaging in that as well. And I think Superintendent Burke had talked about that last time. Do you want to go to the next one?
Sure. Also wanted to point out, this is with input from every single school committee member. Janice wanted to focus on SEL. Carrie and I felt like that was a component that should be woven into everything that we do in practice as a district. So rather than separate it out as its own entity, we wanted to keep it in mind as we kind of, because it is so important. We have had it as a separate almost pillar before, or an individual goal, but we really want it to be be mindful of that in all of the pursuits. As you'll see, even in the other goals that we kind of outlined. And Peter also was mentioning just like data, and how can we from a school committee level sort of quantify any data that goes down right to an individual student. So looking at it from our view, it's supporting kind of the mission of the school. So looking at that strategic plan and how can we keep the needs and wants of stakeholders in mind through that process. So to that end, our professional goal here is that by the end of this school year, 22-23, the Scituate School Committee will increase communication with stakeholders through the following activities. So again, kind of following in line with Superintendent Burkhead's goals. We are working collaboratively on sort of putting out those highlights for school committee that are going out through the district app. We're looking at school calendar, kind of addressing those pieces. We'll be back sooner than we have in the past in terms of timing, December, January versus sometimes March, and keeping all of our channels of communication open and collaborating with everyone in town to ensure the top quality education of Scituate students. And of course, for us as school committee members, part of that responsibility is attendance at liaison meetings and reporting back to the school committee at meetings. So we felt like those are important components to have in there for communication. Want to do the last one?
Sure, yeah. And I think, in addition to the SEL and the DEI work being integrated across, I think the other thing that you'll see, because we know as a school committee, one of our roles as school committee members is to hold the district and Superintendent Burke and his team accountable to these different things. So not only are we active participants in doing the work, we are also holding the district and ourselves accountable for the work that we say we're going to do. And this also comes through in our goal around the MSBA Hatherley School Building Project. So supporting the superintendent and the director of business around the work that they need to do and the committee that's involved with that. We'll be also, with respect to communication, bringing that information to the public and to the families to answer questions and regular reports. And so it was just really important that we also make this a goal, because this is a huge undertaking and we need to keep all the families informed, as well as just hold ourselves accountable to the work that we said we're going to do.
Thanks, Carrie, and thanks for your collaboration on putting this together.
Yeah, well, it's easy when all the members have ideas about what the goals should be. So it sort of just wrote itself, and then we did some editing.
That's right. So questions from anybody on the committee or comments, anything you think we should change, add? Is it clear? Open to feedback from you all on all of this. And again, we don't have to vote on it now if you kind of need to sit on it and let it sink in. I know this is the first time you've really seen it sort of out. You know. I don't know.
I just want to thank Carrie and Nicole for putting this together. You know, it looks great. I think, you know, student achievement is always a hot topic. And I think it's important to point out that with social emotional learning, it's important because we have to make sure that the kids in the school district, their emotional needs are being met, because kids who are stressed, you know, have anxiety, are feeling depressed, they're not good learners. So it's important, you know, we can't just teach kids the curriculum. They're human beings, and we have to look at them with that lens as well. So that's why it's super important.
Agreed. And yeah, I think we were trying to be cognizant too of how important that was and weaving it into all of the goals.
Yeah, I would just make a couple comments. Yeah, thanks Carrie and Nicole for doing this. I think for everyone else, we can't meet as a committee unless we're in public. So these kind of goals needed to be done independently, and then Carrie and Nicole were the nominated goal subcommittee. So they're the ones that took our words, our emails and our recommendations and put this together. So thank you for doing that. I would say I think that all these goals are great. I guess my comment would be we're going to monitor this goal by listening to presentations. And that's the only thing. I think that maybe we need to reword it and have, I don't know, something a little bit stronger than just hearing presentations. I think that we need to monitor the information that's being provided. I'm sure that that's kind of inferred from this goal, but I just want to make sure that it's clear that we're just not going to hear the outcomes, but have some sort of impact on potentially changing those outcomes. I think that's what I want to say. And just a question about advocating for funding of SEL. So, and I'm for that. Do you anticipate that as we build the budget that we will advocate for some of our available dollars to go towards that? Is that as simple as that?
Yes.
Okay.
And supporting the district's endeavors to seek out grants that support SEL or opportunities for, you know, enhancing those areas.
Okay.
SEL.
You know, it's good. I think that it's proactive of us as we begin to build the budget, which is starting now. That the superintendent and his team have an idea of kind of what we may want to see and where we want to see some dollars going. Usually it's a little bit more reactive, I think, where we get the budget and then we make comments. Maybe this goal will help us be a little more proactive in determining where we would like to see some dollars spent. So I think it's good. Thank you.
And Peter, to your point, I understand the how do we measure our impact on sort of all of these things, which is the tricky part, I think, for us, because we are several layers removed from that. So for us, it's back to for me, I guess, maybe you can all chime in, but what is as school committee members, what is our sort of, why are we here? What is our mission? What are our prerogatives? And it's, you know, fiscally responsible spending, educating all students, advocating. So I feel like if we want to have goals that are measurable for us, they have to be within those purviews. So open to more kind of discussion or ideas on that.
I don't know, maybe it says, I agree with you. I think that we're far removed from the day-to-day that goes on in the classroom. Just thinking that we're going to monitor student performance trends, which is great. I think we should do that. But where do we go from there? What if we see something that we don't like or see something that's being positive? How do we make sure that those trends continue if they're positive, or if they're addressed if they're going in the wrong direction? That's difficult to do for us, again, because we're removed from it, but I think that perhaps I fully believe in this goal. I think we need to keep it. It's just a matter of maybe adding a word or two that says something like, and address poor performance, something like that.
Yeah, or we can adjust, we can wordsmith that to even take out the agenda items and presentations and say monitor student performance trends, to
Right.
ensure alignment with superintendent goals or for success or something like that, right?
Yeah.
So that we're keeping our eye on the ball, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think that's a good,
I think that's
an easy
Okay.
wordsmith there.
Agreed. Thanks, Peter.
sure. You guys did all the hard work.
Oh, well, Mike did some wordsmithing too. Any other comments, anyone? Right. Awesome. So we'll take a look at that. Again, and tweak it a little bit until we like it. All right. Thanks, everyone. Next is our subcommittee update, our policy subcommittee with Ms. Lindblom and Mr. Long. Wellness policy. And Mr. Flynn.
Hello, okay, all right. Our first policy is a second reading of the wellness policy. Mr. Ranieri presented last time about all the work that he did with his team to revise that. If you have any questions, we can follow up, but I think it's in pretty good shape for us. If you don't have questions, it would require an update.
Any questions anyone has on the wellness? No. All right. Entertain a motion on that.
I move the school committee approves the new wellness policy, policy ADF as presented. I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
That time it
Okay, the other two policies that we thought this spring, these came up as a result of our tiered focus monitoring. Our policies are overall okay, but we needed to explicitly call out homelessness as a category, that is a protected category, and we needed to do that in both. And we needed a harassment policy to reference our own discrimination policy. So we looked, Mike and James and I looked at the MASC model policies and just updated and put it in alignment. Also, of course, our lawyers looked at these to make sure we're following the rules to follow. Questions about those?
Were those generally those were the updates?
Yeah.
You didn't see anything else that you thought was.
There's no creative writing.
not right? Okay. All right, so that's just a first reading. We'll vote on that
All
next
right,
time.
any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Leadership report, Superintendent Burkett.
Evening, everyone. Tonight we have a guest with me, Steve Dunn, the Senior Project Manager from Vertex Company, our owner's project manager. Welcome, Steve. Thanks for coming in. He's going to have a presentation. We're at a place in the schematic design and feasibility study process where we thought it was important to give the community and the board an update on where we are with the process, but also an in-depth presentation on things such as a timeline, what to expect next, where we are in the process, and a Q&A for the community as well. And then we'll include this in our app blast this week to this community in more detail, summarize that and get the ball rolling on the new school project and get people informed. So I'll turn it over to Steve once he's ready to share his screen.
Thank you, Superintendent. I did. Here, can you share the screen here, the presentation? So I get myself ready here. Okay, so you can see what we're going to present. First, an introduction of Vertex and the folks on the Vertex team for your project. MSBA process and timeline, the designer selection process, and we're in the middle of that process right now. Feasibility process, what that's all about. And schematic design role here. So we'll take you right through the introduction. So this is the Vertex team. John Lemieux, project director, myself, the senior project manager, Allison Marr, project manager, Chin, Laurie, and Steve will have a role at the beginning. Actually, Laurie will be throughout the project in her project accounting role, but Chin and Steve will be mostly at the beginning with some of the efforts to get the MSBA documents submitted and part of that process at the beginning. So timeline, you can see on the designer selection, that's where we are right now. And we have a couple of meetings with the designer selection panel, which I'll get into in a moment on the next slide with some details about what that's about with the MSBA. And then for me, the takeaway here is just that this process to get to all the way to starting construction, it takes a considerable amount of time, as you can see here. So a couple words here that we'll again refer to in a few minutes. We just have a few slides, but we'll get to them in detail in a few minutes. First, the designer selection, which we're in the middle of. Next is to submit the PDP, which is the preliminary design plan. I'll provide some details to what's involved in that. That's a submission that goes to the MSBA. Follows that. First, the redistricting decision. So anticipated for June 2023, next June. Following that, the PSR, which is a preferred schematic report, again, a submission to the MSBA. And then the SD report. The SD is a schematic design report, and that it is that report that basically outlines all the details of the project in the schematic level. And I have some exactly what that means on a future slide here. So all of this would get to the target of spring 2024 for town meeting. After spring 2024, with a successful vote, the project goes into the detailed design phase. So the schematic design is what it suggests, a schematic level project, even though it's detailed well enough and described well enough to provide that number that goes to town meeting. But after that vote, then there's a significant amount of design time that happens after that to then create the CDs or the construction documents. So you can see that takes a while to create those. And then after those complete CDs, construction documents are done, then you go out to bid, and then you get to start construction. So from now until start construction, which would be June 2025. So it takes a while trying or get working through all of those steps. So the designer selection process, again, we're in the middle of that right now. We have our first designer selection process meeting on November 15th, and then the second meeting on November 29th. And I'll take you through what all that means. So the designer selection panel consists of 16 members. We have 3 representatives from the district here that will be part of that. So we have 3 of the 16 votes. The other members are either members of the MSBA staff or appointed by the MSBA to be on this panel. You can see, I won't read everything to you here. You can see we don't pre-rank them. The idea, though, is to have a sense for what the district would like, and also have a sense for who the designers of the district would like and why, which is just as important. And you'll have an opportunity at that, the district will, at that designer selection panel meeting, to present those preferences to that designer panel. At that first meeting, we have 3 bids that came in, 3 packages that we have that are being evaluated. At that first meeting, on the 15th, the decisions will be made about what we then do for interviews on the 29th. So either we'll interview all 3, which is likely, or the decision will be made to interview something less than all 3 too. So that's how that process will work. So after the 29th or on the 29th, a designer will be selected. After that, the contract negotiations get worked out, and then the designer is on board. So it gives you basically the same as I described. These are all the items that we've completed so far, and us on the 15th and 29th of those couple of upcoming meetings. So beginning in December, we'll have the designer on board and ready to go. So this is the slide that describes in some detail what I referenced a few moments ago. So preliminary design program, basically programs the key word there. The program, the educational program, and the space summary, the square footage of each of the classrooms in that educational program. That's the key item that gets submitted in this PDP submission. As I described, you can see some other items here as well. Part of this process, as we'll see, is to come up with alternatives for the project, whether it be to look at the school, look at a renovation, look at all the different options there are to build this project and evaluate all of those options. So you can see in this PSR report, the preferred schematic report, you evaluate existing conditions, look at the different options and analysis of those options, shortlist the options, and then come up with a preferred solution. So it is then that preferred solution that the team brings forward to in much greater detail into the schematic design report. So the detailed program analysis, so you go through and you complete that program analysis, you do traffic studies, all the other items that are listed here. The important ones here, though, is the total project budget, and that's what goes to town meeting, maximum reimbursement, and a project schedule. That's what goes to town meeting. That's schematic design submission. So this is a diagram that shows what the process is like to evaluate the options. So you start with many options, and the next slide goes into a little bit more about how you analyze them. So you start with many options, you develop criteria as to how you want to look at those options and what you determine to be the best. It may be most cost effective, it may be most energy efficient, it may be least traffic impact. You know, that's what the team will do, is come up with those the criteria against which each option will be measured against. And so you start with the many, and then you arrive at the few, and then down to a solution. So that's what that process is. Part of that process, as I mentioned, is to create some criteria across the top here. This is this schematic, not intended for you to be able to read every sentence here. But the idea here is to have the site options, whether it be renovation and this location, maybe town-owned location here, you know, that sort of thing across the top, and the evaluation criteria along the left side. And the idea with this is to have a report that you then grade each site against each criteria. So this may be ed plan accommodates compliance. Somehow a site may not accomplish your ed plan. For example, if you were to stay with an existing building, it may fall short of what you can accomplish from an educational plan there. Operating costs may be a factor, and for example, if they're red, it means it didn't score very highly in that, whereas the green would score highly. So this diagram shows, for example, here you got your best rated ones because you have the most green and the fewest red. So if there's any question that comes up later, how it is that you geez, you didn't even consider this, or in fact we did, and it didn't pan out because it didn't score as well as this site did, for example. So that's how that criteria works, and the documentation of that evaluation, how that works. So in terms of who makes the decisions here along the project, ultimately the school building committee makes the decisions within the project. My next slide, which I think is the last slide, shows the decision points along the way that the school committee is involved with. But in terms of the project focus, technical groups, designer input, the whole project team, but then big picture is large focus decisions. School building committee makes all the decisions. So this, the last slide, shows you along the way what the role is of the school committee, select board, and the building committee. So all of the MSBA submissions, the three that I mentioned before, all have to be signed and accepted by these three groups: the school committee, select board, and the building committee. Educational plan, completely school committee. Any school redistricting, all school committee. So it gives you a sense for what the decisions are, but also this shows the anticipated time frame for those decisions. So MSBA's, there's very lots, several MSBA decisions, so the date isn't listed here, but the educational plan, which is all part of the first one, first quarter next year. Same thing toward the end of that is the redistricting and how that's going to work, end of next year. End of the first quarter next year, sorry. Went through lots of stuff there. Any question? Acknowledge. Any questions you want to refer back?
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for coming tonight and for laying this out. It's helpful to see what the trajectory is and what the next steps are. I have a couple questions, but I'll defer to the committee first. Anybody have any questions? No, sorry.
Thank you very much for that presentation. So will this be up on the website after tonight? And we have that MSBA link.
Right. Yeah, well, like we started to do last week, we'll
Yeah.
send out the app blast and then link it to a website with more detail than even tonight with the presentation, but we'll also context. So yes.
It's looking at the dates, like June of 2025, like that seems so far away when we're doing so much work. It's crazy. But I can't wait to see that options of analysis. That's always my favorite.
Oh, you'll create it too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that'll be the most helpful for the community to see, because it's like literally not in black and white, but like red and green, what's good, what's not, and why.
Anybody else questions? I just had a question. So for the ed plan component, is that literally the structure of? So that includes the square footage of the classroom. So to that end, we'd need to know exactly what the structure of the building will be. So whether it was a traditional K-5 or set up differently by grade level configuration by the beginning of this coming school year.
Sure. So the configuration of the building and the program components and their square footage are two different things. Yeah, so you develop the program and the square footage, which is fairly well outlined by the MSBA, what they should be in terms of sizes, which are allowed, which you have to do, and which are not allowed.
And we already have that.
Yes. So what the building design ultimately is kind of follows that when the designers put their talents together to provide options and options and options for you.
If I might just add to that, the first major elephant in the room will be the school configuration. For example, pre-K to 2, 3 to 5, K to 5 like we have now, K to 5. And that's a huge undertaking. We looked at some other schools that have consolidation plans of more than one school. They used an outside group because it's a lot of numbers and geography and running maps and those types of things. So just this Wednesday, we met with a group that's very familiar with it, does it regularly. So we brought them on board. That will help us with this process to get different configurations of each school that we might consider. And then I also wanted to put one of the slides Steve had is the blue stars that are very important for the community that's listening. That throughout this process, there's many community forums and input, there'll be surveys. So I want to make sure that everybody knows that they'll all have a voice in this process as well. But yeah, that is the first thing we have to tackle. We are getting some help with some professionals that do numbers, hard numbers that we can all look at so people can see the impact on class sizes, redistricting, as Stephen mentioned. I think no matter what, we're going to have to do a little bit of these redistricting because the two schools right now, currently, even if we went to a K-5 model, are bigger than the new school at 460. I think the current ones are over 600. So there's going to have to be some of that. So it's going to be helpful for the community to get that. We have to get that out of the way first, obviously, because then that will impact the educational program. Because a pre-K to 2 school are very different than a 3 to 5 school or K-5 school.
That makes sense. I was just curious when that came into play. So that's
Right away.
that's basically right now.
Yeah, that'll be starting soon.
And will they'll just analyze kind of our full scope of needs and wants and
Well, that the redistrict will look at whatever kind of, we give them the configuration. So if we want to look for a K through 5 like we have now, start with that and look at the numbers, look at the geography and say, okay, here's the school, we already know the capacity. Here's where the other kids that will be going to a different school will be going. And if we wanted as a school committee or a building committee wanted to say, okay, the other option we'd like to look at is PK to 2. What does that look like? Look at a scattergram of how that will impact the rest of the schools, where those children will end up in different grades. And then if we wanted to do another one, 3 to 5, let's say, so we can have 3 different options with 3 different visuals of where all the kids will go in the enrollments in each of the buildings. So I think that would be helpful for all of us to make a better decision. And then that will impact what those schools will do after that decision.
fair enough.
A related question to that is, I mean, that'll be great to see all that. I'm just wondering, for me, that's not a like, well, let me just ask a question. The question is, will we also have discussions around what do those models look like regardless of the building? So like in terms of learning outcomes, experiences, like the numbers are fine, but the numbers are assuming all else equal, which may not be the case. So I'm wondering what the literature says, et cetera, et
Yeah,
cetera.
so currently, I think, Steve, correct me if I'm wrong, that will be running simultaneously to the educational programming. That's the big key. So what's that gonna look like? We have open spaces for kids, what's the lighting look like, the technology needs, classroom spaces, all those things will be worked on at the same time concurrently. So this problem is somewhat unique to us in the consolidation. If it was just a new school, people don't have to worry about looking at 3 different models. So we're doing that while we're doing the regular education programming, which is one of the first things we do as well.
Steve, in the, I guess the pros cons in that chart that you had, is one of those, what happens or what the education model looks like as we're constructing, meaning what do we do with those students who happen to be on site of that construction? Meaning if we choose to tear down Hatherley, where are those kids gonna go as we're rebuilding? Is somewhere throughout the process is that picked up?
So it's a great question. The disruption could be one of the criteria, potential disruption. To speak to the example that you provided, it's often done that we build a new school on the same property while the existing school is still there and operating. And after the new school is occupied, then we take the existing school down. That's commonly done. So schools don't usually have enough room for an entire school, or districts don't typically have room for an entire school to be elsewhere. So it's done that way typically, if that's the answer to your question.
Yeah. I think that's the outcome that we would probably desire. Just I guess specifically, I'm hoping that we can do that. I don't know. I have no idea, but I was just curious I think that it is important to figure out how the students' learning is potentially to be disrupted if we were to choose a particular site, because there's a cost to that, obviously, and then there's a loss to a potential risk to the kids also as we're doing that. But I think ideally it'd be great to be able to rebuild a site, whatever, right? Whatever adjacent to the current Hadley school, that's what we choose, and then not disrupt those students. But I'm not sure if that ideally would come through.
So, yeah, it's a great question, Peter. In fact, when we looked at the 3 designers, I think all of them have experience building a school while another school's in session in close proximity. So that's a huge, because that came up because we want to make sure that the learning experience for the current children isn't inhibited or is reduced as much as we can. So we wanted to make sure that they all had experience with doing that. And it can be done. It can be done well. In fact, I visited a school, Mr. Driscoll and I, in Harvard, Massachusetts, an elementary school that's brand new. MSBA had a program. They invited us to take us on a tour. I believe it was the other school was built with 20 feet from the existing school. And I hope we're not going to cut it that close. But they showed pictures of it. 20 feet is probably just Sam away. So it can be done. And there was obviously safety was looked into in the learning environment, and the superintendent and school board members there and teachers there, and even the students said, that the despite having less space to go out and play and do things like that, but they got creative with that. But the learning was impacted minimally by doing that, so it can be done. Thank you. Chuck,
I guess I had a question about the process, because as we look at that timeline that you had, there's a lot going on that we need to do in Q1. So is that something that I guess, the superintendent Burkhead, is that things that the school building subcommittee members are going to start looking at in terms of how we redistrict, what the educational plan is, and then having that be a regular school committee agenda item? Just so that we're,
I think both. I think the building committee will be doing that for the public forum and the whole time through that process. There'll be input from the community. There'll be regular updates to the committee like this from us on a regular basis. So that the whole then input, it's not going to be a vacuum. That decision, the educational program is huge. It's not going to be made just by the building. Again, that's where these stars come in with community forums, information getting out. So that's going to start, after tonight, even you've probably seen in the last few meetings that we're amping things up a little bit. And the next big step is to get this designer on stage, on board, because the project manager Vertex can work with them, start doing a lot of these things and coordinating a lot of these steps, if you will, like the educational program or other things, the option analysis type of thing. All those things happen with both you and the designer in tow. So we have to get the designer on board first. So that's the next step. And then when that happens, shortly thereafter, the other steps take place.
I remember with the new middle school, we tried to be as open and transparent on meeting dates for the public forum or what was on the school committee agenda. So I just want to make sure we continue to do that, because there are a lot more questions with this project versus the middle school project, that we just get as much feedback from the community as we can, but also let them know, okay, decision is, really going to start this month. We're going to vote on this month, and it's just very clear for everybody involved.
So even this document's helpful, and we can even simplify it some more, and even take this gray box and expand that and be more detailed on one visual, so we can work on things like that for the community. But the whole thing, like I said, is communication. It's just a lot of communication, because there is, there's a lot of involvement of the community. Again, I think it starts, but it hasn't been to date. I think once we get the designer on board, that's the group that kind of really works with us to get this stuff on.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you.
Thanks.
Assistant Superintendent Heidi Driscoll, along with Tammy Rundle, Counseling Department Chair. Leadership report.
I'd like to introduce Tammy Rundle. I don't know if you remember last year, you all were asking us questions about students exiting the district. And guidance took that on and took that question very seriously, and we've been doing exit interviews since then. And they tracked that for us, and she's going to share what we found out. So I'm going to hand it over to Tammy.
Thank you for having me here tonight. Heidi asked me to look at creating an exit survey for students who withdraw their students from Scituate High School before graduation. So we started the process back in probably November or December of last year, creating a survey. And what we've done is created a survey that we can use, keep using. It's not just a one and done, something that we're going to continue to monitor as we go through as students withdraw from Scituate Public Schools for all grade levels, right? So we want to make sure that we are informing our, gathering the information to inform future practice at SBS with the goal of best serving all students. And so what we've done is this slide shows you the number of students that were surveyed
along with the number of students who actually withdrew from Scituate Public Schools. So the first two bars of the elementary schools. So we had 20 students withdraw from elementary from February through October. This wasn't a year-long survey because we didn't create the survey until January of last year. So we had 65% responded to the survey for elementary. We had 69% respond to the survey for Gates. And then we had 80% respond to the survey for the high school. And you'll see that the majority of the students that withdrew from Scituate Public Schools were from Gates. And a lot of that happens to be the students going from 8th grade on to like private schools or going to the vocational school. And I'll show you a little bit more about that in a few slides. So the first slide is where did the students go? And you can see from the pie chart that 36% of our students just moved. They moved out of Scituate. 30% of our students went to like a parochial or religious education affiliated school. 13% went to a private school. 19% went to our public vocational schools, which would probably be most of the both social tech.
I just want to emphasize something about this slide. Even though guidance did do a survey, this slide represents every single student who left according to the withdrawal form, even if they didn't participate in the survey. So this slide is 100%.
All grades.
All grades,
So-
yes.
So when they withdrew, they answered the question, where did they go? So that was like.
It's a part of it, they have to fill out a
Right,
withdrawal
and you have to
form.
send the transcript to a particular point. So even if they didn't participate in the actual big survey, we have this information.
So previously, this is all we had. So you're gonna see after this, the additional information. So I think, I just wanted to make sure that was clear. This is not this is every single student, and then the rest of our slides are the surveys.
So if you want to go to the next slide, this is where the students that we actually surveyed, these are the surveyed families of where they went. And you can see again that 24% moved out, 24% participated in a vocational school. 9% went on to a religious affiliated school or parochial school. 38% went to private schools. 3% went to alternative programs, which might be like a tech up or homeschool. And then 2%, that's where we had a student that withdrew from the MEDCO program. So we wanted to be able to say that as well. So that's what that 2% is.
Could you say one more time too, what was the total number?
The total number of the students that,
Total number of surveys.
the total number of people that were surveyed were 58, I believe.
Can we ask more questions now, or do you want to finish first?
Go ahead, Ness.
Can you just help clarify the difference between parochial school and a private school? Could they be both? For example, let's use BC High. What is BC High?
We put BC High in the NDAs of the world.
Yep.
As a parochial private, as a parochial religious affiliated school.
Okay, thank you.
So we had asked at the end of the survey, we had asked them to provide additional comments, and a few themes arose. Areas for growth was a few comments were that parents had said that some students needed extra support, but some needed more challenging rigor, and that wasn't provided. And the second theme that came up from the areas of growth was just being more transparent with the parents regarding the educational information. That came up a couple of times, just being more transparent with, how we our operations. So we had 46 people provided optional comments overall, and you'll see 25 of them were positive, 4 were neutral comments, and then 17 were negative comments. So the commendation highlights, the common themes that came up were I've been very happy with Scituate Public Schools. The reason for him going to BC High is just that a different Jesuit experience, the Catholic tradition. The second comment that came up was that they had a great experience and that she was ready to spread her wings and do something new and going to South Shore Tech, and then her dream is something that she really wanted to pursue. And then all in all, the student had a very positive experience, both socially and academically, and really enjoyed coming to school every day. So the majority of the comments were positive. So then what we did was we asked students, asked families, their satisfaction with certain categories, and these first three pie charts show the academic categories that were surveyed. So you can see the first one was academic rigor. 72% of our families that were surveyed strongly agreed that they were satisfied with the academic rigor of the Scituate Public Schools. 16% felt that they strongly disagreed or disagreed. 10% of the people that were surveyed said not applicable, and I looked back to see what that meant. And I think a few of those students that answered that were like kindergartners or first grade, so they felt like they really couldn't answer the question. So I went back on that. So the second was the diverse course offerings. Again, 67% of the people surveyed thought that they agreed that we had diverse course offerings. 10% disagreed, 7% was neutral, and then 17% was diverse course offerings. Again, I think a lot of the majority of the families that were surveyed were from the Gates School. So some of this, maybe the areas of improvement for surveys, maybe teasing that out a little bit more in terms of, the level of the schools. Teacher engagement, 80% thought that the teacher engagement was, that they agreed with the teacher engagement. 14% thought they disagreed with it. Neutral was about 3%, and not applicable was 3%, which I think was a little bit of an outlier. And then the next page had students and families were satisfied with programming. So we asked about athletics, arts, and extracurricular activities, and you can see from the pie chart where those where the satisfaction stood. Athletics was strongly agreed. To agree was 15%, 16% disagreed, neutral was 7%, and not applicable was 27%. Again, I think next time we do the survey, we'll definitely pull out and review our high school students. So I think a middle school student versus an elementary student. These are, we're learning as we go. And then as in terms of the arts, 69% were satisfied with the arts programming, 12% disagreed with the art, were not satisfied, and then 19% said they were, it was not applicable. And then the extracurricular activities, 66% were strongly agreed or agree, and then strongly disagree was 7%, 24% was not applicable, and 3% was neutral. And then the last two categories we asked them was, we asked them if they were satisfied with any services outside of the core curriculum, like sport services, and 82% said that they were, that they agreed, they were satisfied with the support services provided by the Scituate Public Schools. 13% said they disagreed, and 5% said neutral. And then the last category we asked was a sense of belonging to the school community, and you'll see that 74% agreed, strongly agreed. That their student had a sense of belonging to the schools. 15% strongly disagreed, and 9% were neutral. So what now? So this is great information, but there are things that we'd like to be able to continue to do. So we're going to continue to survey the families withdrawing a student from Scituate Public Schools. And what we do is we have the counselor call the families and ask the questions and have that conversation, as opposed to just sending a Google link and saying, when you fill this out. One of the challenges that we ran into was a lot of the families withdrew over the summer, and following up in the fall for those summer withdrawals was a little challenging in the beginning of the school year. But we're going to continue to share and discuss the results to inform educational practices with the goal of best serving all students. And in terms of the home away from home, we're collaborating with the social and emotional development teams, the district-wide teams, as well as the school-based teams, to extend the strengthen the sense of belonging category. I know that's really important to us. And then working with the stakeholders to synthesize the feedback and adjust the survey. This was a good first step, but even working with Heidi on feedback for this presentation. So we could ask that question a little bit better or a little differently. So that's what we're trying to be able to moving forward. And I also want to be able to increase the number of families that we survey. Get them as soon as they withdraw, as opposed to waiting to the fall. Can we look at that?
Oh, absolutely. I just want to commend Tammy and her counselors because scroll back to that participation rate. The commitment to getting over 50% of the people to participate in the survey was absolutely excellent. I think a lot of times it's easier to just send out a form and see what we get back, but they really need a commitment to let people know we care where you're going and why you're going there, and we want to make sure that if there is something that we can do better, we hear it and learn from it. And they put so much time into this. So I want to thank you and all of your counselors for reaching out and doing this. Thank you. And let's see questions.
Thank you so much. This is really great. We all, very much support feedback for growth and development as well. So thank you so much. Candace.
Thank you. Right, good. This is great. Thank you so much. So when it came to like the transparency, I was just curious if you were aware of, like we follow DESE, the guidelines for, curriculum. So what is different about the private schools with what they're maybe, are they different or what? Maybe you know what I mean.
They didn't comment about, hey, private schools are more transparent. That's not what the comments were. These were literal unique comments where we just gave them an open box.
Okay.
So I think the theme was more, we want you to be transparent about why people are leaving, not necessarily about the curriculum and all those things. So,
okay. All right.
Wonderful. We were getting the answer.
I know it's going to be tweaked, but maybe one question you could ask families, and maybe you do ask them, is there anything we didn't ask that we should be asking on it? Maybe there's some subject we're not tapping into.
But that's really helpful.
The 74% of belonging, I think that's a very important piece of data to look at, because these families are still choosing to go to other schools for their own reasons, but they still feel like they belong. So I think that's a huge point of information. They're not leaving because they don't feel like they belong. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Right, and that came out in a lot of the comments where, my student wanted to try self-remote tag. They wanted something that's more hands-on.
Yeah.
Some students wanted to, have their religious experience, religious schools.
I think it's important. The big takeaway is that families make decisions that works best for them, and and we're doing a good job of making kids feel like they belong, because they can always come back.
Yeah, thank you for that. It was great. I don't think I expected to see those results. I think I expected something worse. So I'm pleasantly surprised by the survey results. But can you just confirm again, you said something about November? Is that when the survey went out, or
No, I started working on developing the survey in November.
These withdrawal rates are from students who chose not to enroll in Scituate schools from what date to what? date?
February 1st to October 1st, 2022. So we
February, okay,
yeah, so it would be like the last 6 months.
last 6 months.
But we're gonna continue to do this every 6 months. In January, I'll run another report, continue to work with Heidi, and then we'll do it at the end of the year and continue to develop it.
Couple of, I guess, other questions there. Were you able to pick up, like, if a family had multiple students and chose to withdraw all of their students? Does that pick up the data anywhere? I think that could
I
be
think
helpful.
some of that, but most of those were students that moved out of district.
Okay,
Um,
might be helpful. From anecdotally, I believe that there are families with multiple kids and they choose the same or similar paths for each of them, so those responses may be, I don't know, over or
That's a really
understated.
good point. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I just want to make sure so that data is accurate from February of last year until now. So students, but when do students generally withdraw? Usually, isn't it usually September?
It's usually like June and July in the summer.
Okay.
After, a lot of the students that come from that are deciding on different high schools. So they usually come up in June when they know what their plans are.
And one other thought, which only because I've had a discussion with families coming back to Scituate Public Schools.
Yeah.
I don't know how you pick those folks up. I guess when they re-enroll, I don't know if they're a new student or a re-enrolling student, but I know that there are a couple or a handful of students who come back. It'd be interesting to pick up their thoughts about why they came back.
That is a great point. I actually have a couple of emails from parents that are thinking about doing that right now. So we've had a few in the fall for the high school. That would be
I
great
don't know how,
feedback.
you said that when someone enrolls in a district, I guess someone withdraws, you know that they're leaving.
Yeah, logistics.
Okay. I think it's an interesting point, because maybe they answered the survey and then next year they come back. So the reasons that they left weren't really reasonable. Didn't work out to what they got. Right? Again, it's probably only a handful of students, but just to be helpful. This is great
But
stuff.
I think the people I think that's a voice we want to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. No, this is great, I think, because, we've heard people say that everyone's leaving Scituate Public Schools, and you guys just proved to us that they're not. A third of them were just moved out of Scituate.
Yeah,
Right?
and I want to thank all of you because your patience was wonderful, because last year when you asked this, we didn't just have this data at our fingertips. We really needed to take some time to look at this. So we appreciate being able to come back and share.
I think I'm guessing that some folks may think, well, families moved out of Scituate because they wanted to go to a different district. I don't think that's necessarily true, but it seems like a lot of kids moving out of Scituate, a lot of families moving out of Scituate, but I guess it happens.
If they're moving out of state more specifically than.
We wouldn't know, we couldn't pull that out. but
Right,
It would have to
it's
share.
10 peanuts.
Yeah, it's multiple students, right? Like it's
Not a
families.
58.
Right, but it's
so
not a
like
58
14.
newer survey. So
58
remember,
total.
58 total. So it's
Not a lot of unenrollment to start.
And it could be
It's a
3
survey.
families or 4 families that make up the 14
Right,
kids.
right.
Yeah.
Might not be.
So it could be like 3 families. moving
But I
out.
think
Yeah.
we'll take this offline, and if you have any, want to
Okay.
email either of us, if you have any feedback, I think that what I'm hearing makes sense. That we should break out some of the comments into the groups. So here's how the people who moved away felt, here's how the people who went to it. That's something we can do for the next round, and I think that's a good thing. Yeah. But even if you don't know how to articulate it, shoot us an email. We'll figure out.
No, we love this stuff.
Yeah, and Timmy and Hay, I agree. This was a great survey for you to be able to come back and share this information for. Peter took my question about people coming back, which I think is also very important to hear, but. I guess with that other survey that we did, the community, was it 6 or 8 months ago? Do we see themes coming out of this? And if we redo that survey, that we could ask again to, like, for the common themes of why people left, for the specific classes where people didn't feel there was the right amount of rigor, or for the educational information that we're not quote unquote sharing. Is there, what are the specific things that we can make sure are part of these meetings or are part of, information that goes out so we can share that, because.
We have about 3,000 currently among kids in Scituate. We have 58 surveyed, so I would not want to make a decision about what's happening in your particular
Oh, no, I agree.
classroom or something about a whole program based on that tiny amount.
I don't know, I was talking about the survey we did like 6 months ago. I think so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we got feedback from what, like 1,600 people. I'm talking about there, what we would think larger did some.
We did do, the sense of belonging was a topic in the thought exchange, and it is similar to, what we're going to hear, but it's such a tiny sample size. We could incorporate some things into the thought exchange in the future, but what's interesting is people might perceive, well, I think it's like this, like we expected to start it about a certain way, but when you actually get to the data, it looks quite different. So that was huge, and people sharing their opinions, and it is in fact thought exchange, not necessarily a survey of the people.
Okay, I'm sorry, maybe I said it wrong. Do we see themes coming out of this that we're also in the thought exchange, or that if we do a thought exchange again and we kind of embed into the questions that we ask, it kind of tease out some of those same, I guess, major points if we're missing something originally, just to make sure that we're getting the information back that we want from the community.
Yeah, we could absolutely include any of these elements in larger thought exchange. For sure.
Yeah, and I think just one of the questions, the sub questions we had in the thought exchange was a sense of belonging. You can see that's a theme because, we want to get to 100% of that. It was from that was about 84%, I think. So this is interesting, and I think Mr. Gates alluded to it. That we were pleasantly surprised with some of these numbers, that they were so small. First of all, it's back to our commitment of, we said we're going to do it, so we're doing it. But it's also extremely helpful because there was a lot of information going out there that people are mass exiting our schools. And we couldn't answer that. So we said, okay, well, we need proof, yes or no. So I think this is good evidence initially. It's a small sample that people aren't leaving in droves, and we know why they are leaving to some degree now. But even the people, and when I read all the comments, if you read all the comments, you're blown away with how positive. I will say, like, why are you leaving that? Because you're so happy. So 80% in teacher engagement. Now, keep in mind, these are people that are leaving our district. That's impressive. 82% supportive of the district and their experiencing. 74% belonging. So again, we'd like that to be 100, but 74% of belonging of kids that are leaving. Again, room for improvement, but I think all good numbers to start from. Hopefully that allays some people's concerns that there's a mass exodus in our district, but also that we're not satisfied that anybody's leaving the district for some of the examples that were up there for rigor or what other reasons. Again, smaller sample size, but I think what Tammy said with the phone interviews, I think we could do some more follow-up questions on a dry survey that you can say, okay, I'm leaving for rigor. Oh, you were a high school student. Any specific, tell me the story. What? And then I think that will be supplemental information our councils can get. I just want to end by saying thank you to Tammy and to our counseling team. Kind of dumped us on Tammy and Heidi's help in our team and said, we need this. We need this information. And again, those return numbers on the survey is extremely high, I think, for survey data. And we want to increase it, obviously, so we'll work even harder to get even more action.
Can I go ahead? I also think I think back to Mike's point, I think some of the survey questions that you're asking, it would be interesting to also be asking our current families, right? I think these offer some insight, because the only thing I worry, and I think this is all great data. The only question that's coming up for me with respect to the data you've collected is, are the families who are leaving for parochial and private schools, for example, different in important ways than students that stay? And if they are, then I just wonder about the data. So in other words, students sometimes, and we don't have to get into the weeds now, this can be an offline conversation, but students who are leaving oftentimes their families have the resources and means to move to different schools, which means you have some power and privilege in a school system, which may inform your sense of belonging in a school. You may be part of the dominant culture, which means your sense of belonging may be reinforced. I'm not saying that's happening in every case. I'm just asking that question that I think we need. That's why I'd like us to do it to the students that are staying, because I think my guess is on average, they're going to be similar, but I would just like to feel more assured about that in my own sort of understanding of the data.
All right, thank you both so much. That was really interesting. Great, thank you. Much appreciated. Great. Approval of minutes. This is exciting. We are going to approve the August 29th minutes tonight. I can't think like feeling accomplished, and this is it. So, any questions about August 29th minutes or also September 19th minutes before I take a motion to approve both of those?
Motion of August.
Right, we
So, I make a motion to approve the school committee minutes for August 29th, 2022.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
September.
I move to approve the September 19th, 2022 school committee minutes as presented. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
One abstention. Janice abstains. All right, thanks, everyone. Warrants. Dr. Dutch, no warrants tonight. Okay. Correspondence. Does anyone have anything? Other business? Yes.
I just want to mention that I went to the accessibility fair on Saturday. It was awesome. It was lots of good information for families in town, and so next time it comes around, I recommend that everybody go to it. Lots of helpful information for people.
That's great.
Of all ages. I want to thank Megan. I think it was Megan Summer who came here, and yeah. it was helpful.
Yep. Thank you, Janice, for mentioning that. Anybody else?
No
Where
real-
did you go, Peter?
No, I didn't go anywhere. Where did I go?
All right.
I did not go anywhere, but I will be going to the financial forecast meeting on Wednesday. So I wanted to update the committee that I will be there,
Thank you.
along with Superintendent Burke and Dr. Dutch. We'll be discussing our updated budget
Excellent.
expectations for next year.
And I would just mention, thank you to everyone on this committee for taking on those extra liaison. Just, it's like, it's a lot to have these meetings, and then we branch out into those other places, and it's a big lift, especially in the fall when we all have kids, and it's important work, I think, obviously for the district. So thank you all for attending all those meetings. Anything else, any other business or future agenda items? Next meeting is November 7th. Okay, we'll take a motion to adjourn. And 7:28.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you. Nice.